This week's parsha is Parshat Vayikra. We'll actually be focusing on the special maftir of the week, which is Parshat Zachor. It was like a couple weeks ago we had Parshat Shkolim, so same thing. And Parshat Zachor commemorates the fact that we're fulfilling the mitzvah to remember what Amalek did to us when we were leaving Egypt. The key pasuk and the introduction to the maftir we'll be reading is Zachor et asher asal lecha Amalek baderech b'tzeitchem mitzrayim. Right? Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt. Very serious and important mitzvah for those of us who are in shul. We'll see, and highly recommended to go to shul to hear it. For men, it's a mitzvah deoraita. For women, it's a very strong minhag at least. And you'll often see there are even special readings to make sure that as many people as possible can hear it. And you'll see that the silence is absolute. The Baal Koreh makes a special point of enunciating every word, reading it very carefully, and that's that. And so this Dvar Torah is based on what I learned from Rav Bernstein. It's in his sefer Purim. We mentioned it a couple weeks ago, and it's in chapter 10, page 115 specifically, or rather page 113 is where I begin with it. It's part of a larger Dvar Torah. We'll only be taking snippets of it, but so here we go. So here's where we begin. That we refer to the comment of the Midrash about what was behind Moshe choosing Yehoshua to lead the battle against Amalek when Amalek came to attack us outside of Egypt. So why was Yehoshua chosen? So the Midrash tells us, and I'll just read it in English just because actually I'll read it in Hebrew because it's important to hear what the words say. So Amar lo Ziknecha Amar, and then he quotes, so et Elokim ani yareh uktiv v'lo yareh Elokim yavo ben bno shel mi shenemar bo so et Elokim ani yareh v'yipor mi shenemar bo v'lo yareh Elokim. So he, Moshe, said to him, Yehoshua, your ancestor Yosef said, I am a God-fearing man, and it is written about Amalek, and they were not God-fearing. Let the descendant of one concerning whom it is said, I am a God-fearing man, come an exact retribution from those about whom it is said, and they were not God-fearing. So the message of the Midrash seems fairly simple. That is to say, Amalek are described as a people who are not God-fearing. So as a result, we'll take the descendant of someone who is called God-fearing, and he can do battle with Amalek. There's only a very simple question about this. Was there at any point someone else who was described as a God-fearing man who might have descendants who could have also led the battle against Amalek? And the answer to that is yes, there was. And who is this? It's Avraham. If we're to look at the Parsha of the Akedah, it says very clearly once Avraham is about to sacrifice Yitzchak, so the Malach stops him and says, Al tishlach yadcha lanar v'al taslo me'uma. Why? Ki ato yodati ki yireh Elokim ata, because you are a God-fearing person. So as a result, Avram was called a Yireh Elokim, which means that virtually every descendant of his is also the descendant of a Yireh Elokim, in which case Moshe could have chosen effectively anyone to lead the battle against Amalek because they were all descendants of someone who's called a Yireh Elokim. And yet Moshe doesn't do this. He specifically says, no, I want someone who's descended from Yosef, because he was called a Yireh Elokim. What is so special about Yosef that we want one of his descendants? That's the question that Rav Bernstein poses. And we'll go straight to page 116, where Rav Bernstein quotes the Afiki Yehuda. It's a sefer written by Rabbi Yehuda Edel of Slonim. And he says as follows. He explains this midrash as well as others, and he says, the Torah makes a point of saying where it was that Amalek attacked the Jewish people. And this is to say, it was Baderech, on the way. As the pasuk says, Asher karcha baderech, they happened upon you on the way. And even later, as a prelude to instructing King Shaul to attack Amalek, Shmuel says in Hashem's name, Pakarati et asher asa Amalek l'Yisrael asher sam lo baderech ba'aloto miMitzrayim. I've taken account of what Amalek did to you, did to Israel, for they set upon you on the way, right? Asher sam lo baderech, when they came upon you from Egypt. When they came upon you from Egypt. So there's this emphasis about the fact that Amalek attacked us on the way, while we were on the derech. What does that mean? So it says the Fiki Yehuda, there's something important going on here. Like, yes, there's like the basic message that Amalek attacked us while at the back, right? We're on the way, we're a little tired on the journey, and they attacked the old and the weary and the weak. And yes, all that is true, but there's more to it, and there's more going on here about the evil that Amalek did. That is to say, and here's a bit of background information, that there's a notion, and Amalek is familiar with this. Amalek, by the way, stands for the presentation that Amalek knows that there's a God. They just reject the notion that God cares about our day-to-day activities. In fact, this is even alluded to in the Psukim. If we go back to Parshat Beshalach, right before Amalek attacked, and this is critical, we're in Shmot Yud Zayin. We go to verse 7. So that's a point where the Jewish people were rebelling again, and they asked for water. And so Moshe gave it to them. And just reading it again in English, so he called the place Maseh Umeriba because of the contention of the children of Israel and because of their test of Hashem, saying, "Is Hashem among us or not? Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu im'ayim." Is God among us or not? The very next pasuk says, "Vayavo Amalek, vayilachem Yisrael berefidim," because that's almost an invitation to Amalek. You're asking whether or not God is even among us. That's our call, and that's what summons Amalek. You're questioning whether or not there's a God amongst us. That is the definition of Amalek. So you see that they reject this idea of God being involved with us. Now, as a bit more background information, we see that also there's this concept that every nation has a land that they're associated with, and there's a special sar, right? There's an overseer, a special malach, an angel, who watches over that nation, who gives power to that nation. If people are off location, then that malach no longer has power to help them. They're no longer connected to their special sar. Now, Amalek obviously knew that the Jewish people had an especially powerful sar, and they wanted to make sure that the Jewish people were never able to connect to him. And so since they knew that the Jewish people were going to Eretz Yisrael, which is where their place was, which is where their sar had power, Amalek were trying to cut us off and to keep us away from that place. And that's why it's so important that they attacked us baderech. They attacked us on the way, because it was their notion that, look, if the Jewish people aren't on location, aren't in Eretz Yisrael, then there's nothing going. They have no connection to God. And now our question is, well, were they right? And the reason why this is such a delicate question is because in a way they were right. At the end of the day, when the Jewish people aren't in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have the optimal connection with God. We are off location, and therefore the power and the strength of our relationship to God has been weakened. The mistake that Amalek made was they didn't understand that God is never off location when it comes to us. The Jewish people and God are connected always, forever, wherever we are. It didn't matter the fact that we were on the derech, and that's something that Amalek did not understand. And that, by the way, is why we want to emphasize Yosef over Avram. Why does the Midrash tell us that the reason why Yehoshua was chosen was because he's a descendant of Yosef, right? Yehoshua was from the Shevet of Ephraim. Ephraim was one of the sons of Yosef. What was so important about connecting Yehoshua to Yosef as opposed to Avram? And for that, we just need to look at the difference between Avram and Yosef. When Avram said that he was a Yareh Elokim, where was he? He was in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, on Har HaMoriah, the Temple Mount. He was in the place of connection, right? That's exactly where he was. But that doesn't really do battle with Amalek. Amalek was questioning whether or not we were still connected to God outside of Israel. And that's why we reference Yosef. Yosef said that he was a Yareh Elokim when he was in Egypt. He was completely divorced from everything that he grew up knowing. He wasn't near his parents or his father in particular. He wasn't near his brothers. He wasn't in the land of Israel. He was effectively completely disconnected from his history. And even so, he was a Yareh Elokim, and that's why we needed Yehoshua, who's a descendant of that lineage, to do battle with Amalek, who were questioning the relationship with the Jewish people once they were off location, because Yosef was a living representation of the fact that no, the connection is still strong when we're off location. It doesn't matter. And as a concluding point, we want to ask, what was Yosef's secret to being connected to God while he was off location? And to that we see that when a person is separated from his surroundings, that tends to help a person unravel, unfortunately, because they're no longer surrounded by what they're familiar with, right? When a person goes to travel or when he moves, there's suddenly he doesn't really know where he is, people don't know him, he might feel a little bit more lax about his obligations, he might even forget what it is he's supposed to be doing because he's out of his regular habits and his daily schedule. And therefore, a person could fall to pieces. And the only thing that will help him aren't the external settings, but rather what he's internalized so deeply that it doesn't matter where he is, that he'll stay true to those values. And that's what Yosef represented. The fact that he was so strong internally, it didn't matter where he was. He knew what was correct and what was true, and he acted in accordance with that, and he avoided that which was wrong, because it was wrong, and not because it was simply a product of where he was, a product of his surroundings. That's what Yosef proved was not critical. And that was his the key to him staying loyal and a Yara Elohim outside of Israel. And then finally, just as a final point, just because it's such a beautiful idea and really leads into Purim, there's a special section there's a section of the Masechet Brachot on Chaf Tet Amud Beit that says as follows. So Amar le Eliyahu l'Rav Yehuda, lo tirtach lo techti, lo tarvi lo techti, ukshe'ata yotze l'derech hamlech bekon chavetzeh. Amar Rav Chisda, so tfilat derech. So said Eliyahu to Rav Yehuda, do not become angry and you'll not sin. Do not become inebriated and you'll not sin. And when you're about to embark on a journey, consult your maker and then leave. Said Rav Chisda, this refers to the traveler's prayer. So what do these three pieces have to do with each other? Said the Maharal, these three things are connected because they all address the perils that may beset a person who has lost his bearings. We just spoke about how when a person is surrounded by his normal environment, and therefore he'll fall into line. When a person leaves his environment, right, or he loses his bearings, right, he gets angry and therefore loses self-control. Or of course, when he gets drunk, when a person loses his control, he loses his grasp on his intellect. Therefore, a person could again start falling apart. They'll unravel. And the same thing, and that's internally, but externally, the same could be true when a person goes journeying, right? When a person leaves his surroundings, when he leaves his home or he goes out on a journey, then he too is at risk of losing his bearings. And therefore, the advice is, and of course we know that, look, a person could prevent himself from being angry, a person could prevent himself from being drunk, but a person might need to journey. There's nothing to do with that. And therefore, the command of Eliyahu isn't don't do this. He says, okay, when a person goes to a journey, just consult your maker. Make sure that you consult him. Make sure that you are aware of the fact that you're still connected to him before you go journeying, which is an amazing thought, because we would always have thought that when we say Tfilat HaDerech, the whole point is to protect ourselves from external threats. But really, there's a deeper layer to this. Not only are we praying to God to protect ourselves from external threats, but it's also to protect us internally, to make sure that we still feel connected as we're going out on this journey, so that we can stay true to who we are. And in this way, we said we shouldn't become drunk, but there's a special, unusual mitzvah on Purim to drink more than is usual. There are different, customs as opposed in terms of how much you are supposed to drink, but at the very least, you're supposed to drink to a certain point where you lose a certain connection to your intellect. And that too could be considered a journey. And what's beautiful about this journey is, as we're setting about on this journey, right, and we start to go off location as we continue to drink a bit more and more, then we're meant to. This part of Brachot is telling us we're supposed to consult our maker, make sure that we feel connected, that we're still on the way, that we're not off the way, right? To remember Amalek, what they represent, and how we stand completely against that we're always connected. And that should lead us into Purim, and everyone should have a Shabbat Shalom. Take care.